We're back with part 3 of this video series showing the technical setup for my live music performances. So I'll be linking to parts 1 and 2 in the video above and in the description below. But just a quick recap here. In part 1, I showed you my REAPER project, which of course is available for download here in the description of this video, just to show you how the instrumentation is set up. And then in part 2, I talked about how to link together OBS and REAPER in a couple ways to get them to communicate with each other, namely to just send audio and then of course to change scenes to make your performance a little more dynamic. Like if you want to have multiple cameras, multiple scenes with your cameras, or just to show like video scenes and things like that. So in this video, we're going to show how to get REAPER to talk to a DMX controller, which will talk to DMX lights. And then we're going to bring this all together in a demo. I will show you how to send MIDI data to OBS to change scenes, and then at the same time send MIDI data from REAPER to your DMX controller, and just to bring it all together in kind of this one dynamic performance. So let's get started with the fun stuff, programming the DMX controller. So things may look a little cramped here, but this is somewhat on purpose. I want to try to keep things together. And obviously I have this other additional camera set up over here that's pointing down at the DMX controller. So you can kind of see what I'm doing and see how they would affect the lights as I make changes. If you've never worked with DMX lights before, there is a little bit of a learning curve, but I would just say, hopefully with my help with this video, read your manuals. And I say manuals in plural because your DMX controller is going to have its own manual, and depending on what light fixtures you have, they may have their own sets of operation and manuals as well. If they're exactly the same, like if you have two stage lights that are exactly the same like this one, then that's going to make your life easier. But if you want to kind of make things more interesting, you want to get different types of lights like I did, like this is a pan and tilt type of light, it's going to operate differently. So I'm going to call out the differences between the two as I walk through this. Let's talk about the DMX controller. So you can see right here, I have it. All this stuff is linked in the description. This particular DMX controller gets the job done. It kind of looks like a mixing console, but that is obviously not what it is. But what you can see here is you've got two columns of buttons here for fixtures. This is what you would select to actually control one individual light or multiple lights at once if you wanted to. And then you have scenes 1 through 8. So that's where you would store a particular scene of lights. Like I want this light to be blue, which is what it's set to now. And then maybe I want this light to be yellow and it's pointing upward or something. So that in and of itself is a scene. That's where you would actually store all of those. Next, we have the actual, these kind of fader looking things. I'm sure they have a real name. I don't know what they are. So I just call them fader things. But these are what actually control the individual channels of your lights. So a channel is usually some kind of parameter or some kind of setting for that light. So channel 1 on this stage light is red, and then channel 2 is green, channel 3 is blue, and then the other 3 settings or 4 or 5 settings are escaping me right now. But you can kind of figure it out on your own just by kind of moving these things around or just reading the manual. The manual will tell you for a given particular light what a particular channel does. And then over here, there's like 2 additional sliders. One's for speed and fade time. That's to control if you're switching from one scene to another. I generally don't tend to touch these. I just leave them on the lowest fade time and the highest speed, so that if I move from one scene to the next, it happens almost instantly. The last column of buttons here, what you didn't talk about, are just various functions. So you have the bank buttons. So you have 8 scenes per bank, and I think this controller has somewhere around like 30 banks. So you could store 240 scenes. So that's quite a bit. And then there's various buttons here for programming for actually storing scenes and then programming the actual operator itself. Next, the lights. So here's a stage light. One reason I like this is this particular one is it's sturdy. It's got a metal housing, and there's no fan in it. So it's just a heatsink attached to it, and this operation of this is pretty simple. We're gonna walk through that light first. This light is a pan and tilt light, and is not as sturdy. It's like a little bit of metal and a little bit of plastic. It's mostly plastic. There is a fan in it. You may be able to hear it as I'm talking. So if you've got like multiple ones of these, you may just want to be cognizant of the noise. And if you're not a fan of fans, then you can just use static stage lights. But of course, this offers some advantages because it does more things. It pans, it tilts, and it's got a couple other bells and whistles. All in all, compared to stuff that you could walk into Guitar Center for, which I would never ever recommend, this stuff is pretty reasonably priced. Okay. Now, let's actually mention one thing first. So your lights are going to have different modes. So a mode where you just set it to a static color, or maybe it just cycles through a set of colors. In our case, we want to set it to a mode where it accepts DMX. So I'll talk about that really quick, but maybe I'll do a little bit of zoom in here, but basically, you can see here that the display shows E001. So E just basically means this is accepting DMX signals from a controller, which is exactly what we're doing. And 01 specifies the starting channel. So every light is likely that you have is going to have 16 channels. So this is the first light, so we start with 1. This light is, when you put it in DMX mode, would actually start on channel 17. So if you just do the math and just keep adding 16 in each increment. So you could look at your manual. There's usually a table in there that will tell you what, just kind of the table of 16, 16, 16. So if I added additional lights, which I do have 2 more of these exact ones, then I would add 17 plus 16 and then another 16 on top of that. May seem a little confusing, but that is how you would actually set up an actual sequence or chain of lights. A few of the things I'll point out on the back of the light itself is that here's the actual DMX cable. It looks like an XLR cable, but that is not what it is. So I'll link to the cables in the description. It's very likely your lights will already come with cables, but they're probably not going to be long enough. Depending on how large your room is and how many lights you're going to set up, you may need multiple or longer DMX cables. Notice here for the power, there's two outlets. One is to actually go from your actual power outlet, but you can daisy chain your lights together. You can daisy chain DMX cables together. So like here, there's a DMX out, but this is the first light in the sequence, so I don't really need that. But here, this bottom one is actually coming from my outlet, and then this top one is a cable that goes right into this one. So I don't have 2 lights plugged into my power outlet. I only have 1. They're daisy chained together. And you can do that with every other light in your sequence. So it reduces, it definitely helps reduce the number of cables and also reduces the length of the cables. So if you're going to go crazy and do more than 4 lights like I do, and this, for this demo, we're only doing 2, that definitely helps. But of course, you're just going to need more cables. Okay, let's get to some actual programming. So here we've got, we're going to focus on programming the stage lights, and I'll try to keep it in frame here as much as possible. So again, this is in DMX mode. It's on, the starting sequence is 1, which is programmed on the back. So I'm going to hit number 1 on the controller here, which means I want to program fixture 1. If I want to program this one, I press fixture 2. If I had 2 stage lights, or 2 stage lights like this, and I had this one on 1 and then the second one on 17, then I could press both of these and program them both together at the same time. So it helps you a little bit in terms of streamlining your work. Let's hit 1, and we're programming this fixture. So everything, all these sliders, faders, whatever, they're all turned all the way down. So I'm going to move this up, and you should see actually I'm going to move all these up and then all down just to kind of reset the colors, which now the light is off. So 1 is red. 2 is blue, and then 3 is green. Oh, actually, I went too far. 3 is green, 4 is white, and 5. Now I need to actually set some kind of color so I can see what the other 2 do. So let's say I want this kind of. I think 5 is actually the dimmer. Yeah, so I need to actually keep 5 all the way up so that we actually get some light out of this. So let's say I want to do kind of this. Like this purplish kind of color, which I personally like. And on the camera, it may not look that way, but if I shine it backwards like that, you can see the exact color that I'm going for there. I got the color that I want, and now I've got slider 4 is white. I don't care about that. Slider 5 is the dimmer, so that just shuts it off. But I'll put it somewhere in the middle. these lights can be pretty bright. There's going to have to be some balancing you'll do in terms of your visuals if you go through with this, where if you're using cameras and stuff like that, trying to not to turn the brightness up way too high, or just going to wash out your picture, and your audience is just going to be like, I can't see anything. So just be cognizant of how bright these lights are. They can be pretty bright. And then 6, I think, is the strobe. Yeah, it is. So right there, like that's a very fast strobe, but on camera, it's probably not showing up that way. So I'll slow down a little bit, but you can kind of see how it strobes. And that's an effect I like to use for like double kick runs and anything like super fast in the middle of a song. And then 7 and 8 do something, but I honestly can't remember. Okay, yeah, that just kind of like, so yeah, this one just kind of switches. So I think this one controls the speed. Yeah, okay, so that's like a color strobe. That's pretty nuts. But I think in my own scenes, I actually don't use those. Okay, so let's consider this light programmed. And again, so that, there's the actual color, and I'm just kind of shining it backwards. Okay, so next, I'll talk you through the second light. Now, again, we're going to press 2 so that we indicate we want to control this particular light or fixture. And I've kind of moved my faders around, but let's just walk through the different settings here. So this is the first slider is to pan. So this goes all the way around 180 degrees. Pretty neat. I'm going to point this a little bit towards the back so you can actually see where... Okay, the light's pointing up so you can't quite see it, but slider 2 is like very fine tuning panning, but it's very minute, which I usually don't use. 3 controls the tilt, and so I'm going to reset this so that's down to 0. So you can see it's pointing towards the back wall, but I'll point this up just a little bit, and hopefully it stays in frame of the camera there. And then 4 is just fine-tuned tilting, which we don't need. 5, I don't quite remember what that does, but 6, I believe, is the dimmer. Yes, now 6 is it. On this particular light, I'm not really a fan of how this works, but this is how it works. 6 controls the dimmer, so we go up, and then once you reach like past the halfway point, it turns into a strobe, and then it just turns into a static light. So... I mean, just having kind of 3 operations in the same slider seems kind of weird, but so I'll just use the dimmer, and I'll just put it like somewhere in the middle, and you can see here on the display, like, what the numbers are. It goes between 1 and 255, so we want about like somewhere halfway on that dimmer there. Okay, so 7, 8, and 9 control red, green, and blue respectively, and I'm going to turn these down. So now we're basically at 0. So there's red. And maybe should we, we'll do like, I kind of like that green color, so we'll stick with that. Now, blue is on channel 9, and as you can see, I've gone all the way over. So to go to the next set of channels, you just click this channel bank button. So what that does, it switches this light right here, so that you know that you're between channels 1 through 8 and 9 and 16. So that's set to 9 and 16 now. So now this first slider is actually channel 9, and this should control blue. So if I turn that up, we kind of get this, that teal color is kind of nice. So we'll stick with that. And then beyond that, I don't remember what the rest of these do, but let's just kind of play with them. Okay, that's white. Don't really want that. This is like a color cycle, I guess. Yep, I don't want that. And then I know there's like, I don't know what that does. Oh, wait, I think this may control, actually, I don't know what, nope, I still don't know what that does. There is a setting on here, and let's see if I can find it. I still don't know what that's doing. Yep, I think I'm not sure which one it is, but there is a setting. Oh, there it is. It's actually that one. You can kind of see the lights kind of doing this sort of freestyle thing. It's just kind of like panning and tilting around, and then I think there's so there. That's kind of a cool one I like to use for certain scenes. Is just to use that one, but I'm going to turn that back down just to reset it. Reset that back to where we were. So I've showed you how to control both of the lights. Now, we want to actually program what we have into a scene. So I'm going to hold down the program button. And now what that actually did, however, is it reset my lights to the scene that I was on scene 1. So any changes I made were gone. But I wanted to show you at least how to control the lights before we actually programmed anything. So I am in program mode right now. There is a little like flashing light there to show that. So I'm just tilting this a little bit forward so you can kind of see what the deal is there. But now let's actually program something, and we'll try to go through this a little bit quicker since I've technically done this already. So we need to switch this back to the first channel there, and we will, we'll kind of go with this like purplish color. Maybe we'll shake it up a little bit, like that kind of a tealish thing. And then this is the dimmer, so we'll put that somewhere in the middle. Okay, so we like that one. And then I'll unselect fixture 1. We'll go to fixture 2. And I mean, I kind of already like that yellow, but maybe we'll pan that down a little bit because it's out of frame. There we go. Yeah, that should be good. Maybe I'll pan it a little bit to the, maybe not so much that way, but maybe that way. Yeah, so that you can like see the distinction of the colors, right? I think that's good enough. So the next thing you'll do is on the controller, you'll hold down MIDI record, and what that'll do is, actually, I don't think you have to hold it. You just press it, and then you pick which scene you want to store this configuration to. So I hit 1, and then you'll see the display actually kind of flash like all 8s. So now we have actually set up that scene to be that way, and now we want to exit programming mode. So I will hold down program, and what that does is it shuts all the lights off, and it actually turns on something called blackout mode, which is flashing right there. Whenever you exit program mode, it always does this. It turns the controller into blackout mode, and then to exit, you just press the blackout button on the controller, and we are back to our original, back to the original scene. So what I'm going to do next, I'm just going to program one more scene just so you can show like the difference between one and the other. Again, we will hold down program. The program light indicator is up there on the controller, and I will unselect the second fixture. I'll go to the first fixture. So let's say this light, again, it's a static stage light. All we can do is really just change the color. And what I'll do here is let's turn these down. So there, maybe we'll make this a, maybe like this kind of tealish thing, or do we want to, I'm kind of just trying to decide what I want to do here. We'll just do like a solid red, and then on the dimmer, we'll put it somewhere in the middle. If we wanted to go nuts, we could, do a strobe or something like that. But just for your sake, I won't program this crazy strobe right now. So I think that's totally fine. Now we are going to move on to the second light, and maybe like just to make this a little more interesting in this scene, like maybe we'll just tilt up the head a little bit. So right there, so like it points a little bit more towards the ceiling, right? Something just a little more interesting. And then maybe, I could pan it a little bit or something like that. And let's change the color. So right now we're on, let's just make it green. It's the holiday season right now, so we'll just kind of make this Christmassy, whatever. Okay, so now we need to actually store this. And what we'll do is, again, press the MIDI record button and then hit number 2. So now we have stored that to the second scene. Let's exit programming mode. I will hold down the program button. And now we have entered blackout mode, hit the blackout button, and now we are back to our first scene in this bank. Now, if I hit scene, I'll just unselect 2 just to keep everything clear. If I hit number 2, there's our kind of a red-green scene, and then with the head turned up, and then like this teal-yellow scene for number 1. And then just do this for every single scene that you want. Now, there obviously, again, there's some other things to talk about, like chasing, but again, you're going to be using Reaper for actually setting all of your different lighting scenes, and I'm going to show you how to do that next. So we're back in Reaper, and I showed you how to set up 2 scenes based on just programming the lights. Now, I've shown you this diagram before, but again, you need to run a MIDI cable from the MIDI out of your audio interface to the MIDI in of your DMX controller. And this particular DMX controller has a MIDI in, and I think a good number of them out there do. And I think a good number of audio interfaces out there have a MIDI out. So you do need a MIDI cable, obviously. That there is a link to that in the description, not very hard to find. So yep, just run that cable from your audio interface from the output to the input to your DMX controller. You see here, and I have skimmed over this a couple times, but I have a track just called light control. There's nothing but MIDI on it. So you will need to tell this particular track what the MIDI, what the hardware output is. And in this case, it is, and I have it already set up here, but you just add a hardware output for your audio interface's MIDI port. And in my case, it's the Focusrite USB MIDI, Focusrite USB audio interface. Okay, so what I'll do to demonstrate this, I'll take a song like Dr. Mario. This this section is probably something we can work with, where we'll actually bring in some MIDI. One other thing I'll mention about my particular project is I have my project tempo matched with the actual song, so that way, like if I want to try to sync up the lights as much as possible to what's happening in the song, then I would recommend setting the right tempo inside your project, which is actually matched to what is it in your backing track. Now I'm going to open up this new MIDI item, and it's huge, but here, now the one thing, now this should be in your manual of your DMX controller, but it will tell you which MIDI note corresponds to which scene corresponds to which scene that you actually want to pick. Or note 0 corresponds to bank 1, scene 1. And then 1 corresponds to bank 1, scene 2. And then it goes all the way up to, I guess, 240 or whatever it is. But let's say as this section begins, we'll want to show the first scene. So I'll just put this note here, and there we go. So you might have just quickly saw my the moving headlight just pan very quickly, and because I've set it to scene 1. Now, by the way, if you hit that scene button again, it blacks it out. So yeah, so now everything is off. Now we'll turn that back on. So actually, I'm going to shut this off, and then I'm going to play this so we can just try to tempo match it. Hold on. Okay, so it's like pretty much like, this section's in 4/4, so in every other beat, let's just switch the scenes. So there is the second scene we created with the green, red, green, and then let's just copy these over, and I think that kind of gives you the idea. Now let's just play this one snippet of the song, and you'll see the lights change according to the switch between the two scenes. Of course, I'm just using 2 scenes here. You can use 3, 4, whatever creatively moves you. So let's just play this again. Yeah, and then now if I could just copy this entire MIDI item over, if I just want to do the exact same thing I just did. And hold on, I think, yeah, there we go. I had a little bit of duplication there. And let's just play this section again. I think now I'll just show you a demo of a rehearsal I was doing preparing for this particular live set, and then just show you kind of in real time, synced along with the actual video, what was actually happening. So this is the final video of the series. I hope you've learned something and have got some more creative ideas. When I originally built this setup, there were more ideas that I had, but I just simply ran out of time to where I had to stop and just get ready for my actual performance. So now I'm going to circle back and build on this even more. But I hope if you're watching this, that you realize you're only going to be limited only by your own creativity and your own imagination. So have fun out there.